Good. All right, so why don't we go ahead and get started.
Who are you?
I'm Rose Blessing. I'm the moderator.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Yeah. Let's see. Why don't we talk to Sue and Lorraine and Diana, and I changed my questions a little bit based on what we did last time. I think it might work better if it's the same questions, just a different order. I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself and talk about, we don't have time to go at length about what your memoir is about, but just a little bit about your memoir, and with the goal of telling other writers what they might be getting into. Why don't you talk about what your first attempts to write a memoir were like, and what principles of memoir writing did you learn by, trial by fire, and what things did you succeed at? And so why don't we start with Lorraine?
Okay. Well, I have two published memoirs. Life Touches Life, A Mother's Story of Stillbirth and Healing, that dealt with the death of my only daughter, my only child. And then 6 years later, Self and Soul on Creating a Meaningful Life, which was a spiritual memoir about keeping faith in life in middle age when things don't work out the way you expected. When you're I have a third one underway that is actually going to merge three viewpoints. It's a family estrangement memoir, and I have connected with some family members. And so we're going to work out how to do a sequential multiple viewpoint. We're meeting in Chicago next month.
Okay.
So my first attempts definitely was Life Touches Life. And I learned that some stories have to be told from the inside out. After so many years of journalism, writing from the outside in, I realized the power and the necessity for the first person, and the urgency even, and how memoir can help you process your own psyche and your own emotions.
Yeah. And so what do you mean by inside out? Talk about that.
First person. So you're writing incidents and things that are happening in the world, and you are weaving them with your inner life, how you're responding to those things.
Okay.
It's on the level of thought and emotion that we act.
Okay.
That's why I love this. I love this genre.
Okay. All right. So that's the difference between that and like straightforward fiction or straightforward journalism, is that the story is your reactions. Would you say that?
That's part of the story, yes.
Okay. And then the other part, so for you with your memoirs, part of this the art of telling the story then is your reactions. And then the rest of the story is?
So incidents are what's happening in the world, and then how they're impacting your inner life is your reactions or your reflections.
Okay.
Dance between those two things.
Okay.
If you only stay inside your head, you can come off as almost mad,
Okay.
But if you have to bring in and orient the reader in time and space and circumstance.
Right.
Then they understand, and then they're intrigued by going into your head.
Okay. So it's a balance of those things.
Yes.
That's really nice. Yeah, because sometimes when I've tried to do introspective things, some are good and some are like, wow, that was a hormonal day. And I just throw it away. So, okay. Let's see what Diana, what you have to say about that.
She's not here. She's not here yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see.
She's still missing.
Yeah, Sue.
Oh, hi. I started writing a memoir when I lived in New Jersey, and I became part of the Write Group. And it's called Confessions of an Executrix, and it was about my dad dying and me being the executrix. And I know there's debate about the title, but I'm committed to it because I just thought it was really odd when I met up with the attorney, and I found out I was not an executor, I was an executrix, and it just reminded me of dominatrix. So I thought that was cool. And it's all essays. And the Write Group people in the Write Group have said, write them, hang them on a clothesline, see what you got. And that's kind of the approach I've taken.
Okay.
Some of them are more sort of grounded in the physical world.
So when you said write them, you're talking about, I'm familiar with that metaphor from the groups, write pieces of your story. And
Yeah,
then,
yeah. And
and then hang them on a clothesline and see where they go.
Yeah, I'm still at the not sure where they go stage.
Okay.
And I did actually start writing them so that they could be complete within like 6 pages.
Okay.
Because that's what we read in the memoir group.
Okay.
Which is kind of interesting. And it works. I mean, some of them have several parts to them. And
Okay.
I moved to Colorado 2 years ago, and I said briefly last week when we sort of talked that here everybody is sci-fi, romance, detective, and I forgot to add vampire hunters. There's a lot of people here that are writing about vampire hunters, and the only memoir person I've met here is very sports oriented. So she comes from a sports family. And so that's kind of not that dark.
Okay.
Mine's kind of dark and very sad. And so I'm in one writing group here called the Underground Writing Project. We meet once a month and they'll read up to 40 pages over the month and then submit again. So I'm going back and forth between some fantasy adult fairy tales and this memoir. And
yeah, but for the sake of this meeting, we should probably focus on the memoir.
right. So what they've said to me, which has got me stuck, is that it's too sad.
Oh,
Isn't
okay.
there anything funny or lighter or brighter in the story? And then I left this question on the table. Since it's individual essays, one woman who critiques in this group said, well, are they self-contained or are they chapters? And if they're self-contained, each one has to work by itself. But if you're going to eventually put it into a book, it has to equal, it's greater than the sum of its parts. So
Okay.
that's got me stymied.
Okay, so that's the thing that you're learning is you've assembled several experiences, and the next puzzle is how do they fit together, basically.
Yeah, and how do they become more than what they are individually, which I'm not sure I agree with this person, but I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
And in the meantime, I split part of it into a second memoir called Confessions of a Bedwetter, which was me. And it's like tales of guilt, revenge, anger, rage, whatever. And that, some of them started to be more about me than about my father and me talking to my father.
I see. So you separated those out. Okay.
Yeah, and they're actually, I've gone to some open mics here and read some of them and gotten pretty good feedback about.
Okay. So bouncing back to what Lorraine said, your second memoir about memoirs of a bedwetter, did you end up relating that to, current events and history and all of that?
I'm sorry, current events.
In other words, did you get stuck in your own head, or were you able to bring your memoir into the world around you?
Into my world. Sorry, into my world around me.
Hold on a second.
Hi.
No, it looks like Diana's here. Hi.
Yeah. Hello. Finally.
Diana. Okay, so we can hear you. We're in the middle of
Can you see it? Hold on. So I had power outage issues at home. So now I'm stuck in a university lobby that is very, very noisy, and I have no place to go. So,
okay. You're covering background noise, so that's good.
you are hearing my background?
No, we're not. We're just hearing you. Yeah,
Okay.
you're a little wavery, but we hear you.
Well, I'll still head over to the floor. Kind of far away from everything.
Okay.
So, hi,
Okay, so you're with us now.
I am with you now.
Okay, we're going to jump into Sue. And Sue is talking about her second memoir that she's written on. Go ahead, Sue.
Okay, so this other story, is that me? I feel like I'm hearing, well, anyway, this other story is, I got an echo.
I think that is Diana's background.
Yeah, I just muted her.
Okay, so
Okay.
Diana, you're temporarily muted, but when you talk, we'll turn you back on.
I'll
Okay.
unmute you when she has to talk.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, yeah, well, the bedwetter thing is about actual events, so it's tied into the physical world, but it is my past.
Okay.
And it's not as much in the present. Well, I don't know, I just did one that's titled Jehovah's Witnesses, I Am Your Mark. So
Okay. Yeah.
this area is so religious where I am living now, and I actually read it at a Speaking of Faith conference and got people to identify with it, I guess, because Jehovah's Witnesses have impacted everybody in their lives one way or another. So it became a universal essay.
Well,
Okay, that's
Lorraine has a hand up. She wants to say something, I think.
Oh, thanks. Okay, I didn't notice. Okay, hi, Lorraine. Go ahead.
Hi there. Just briefly in response to what Sue is saying, that response that you got, it's too sad, is not helpful and textual. And if it's sad, let it be sad. And number two, in fitting the pieces together, I mean, one way to approach that would be to think about how you changed during the experience of being executrix or bedwetter. And that is your consciousness shifting. So you want to move from being one consciousness state to another.
Helpful? Yeah? Yeah, Sue, was that
Good
any
advice.
comments, Sue?
Good advice. And I just am still here seeking people that are writing more similar things. I haven't found them yet.
Okay.
Well, that's hard.
Okay. Let's see. All right, let's try jumping to Diana. We're going to give her the same questions. Hi, Diana.
Give me a minute. I got to run back to my car, so hold on.
Okay. All right, so I guess we're not talking to Diana. All right,
Yeah.
Carl, did you want to add anything? Talk about the memoir you started and the things that you shifted to as you were writing it.
Okay, I just want to say quickly though that Lorraine is right to Sue that, you know, we're all dealing with very difficult things by and large. You know, Terry has been working on a memoir that's very, very difficult, and that's what we want to share. So it's not like we're writing fiction or some making up stories or whatever. But the important thing is that you want to relate what you went through and your skill of writing, and people who read it will probably resonate some of the feelings. Maybe not exactly the same circumstances, but there can be health issues or family issues or any number of things. What I've started doing, and I have the world's record for the shortest time it took to write my book, which was 8 weeks, and it's been selling for 15 years. And the longest time, which is my memoir, which started soon after I went to Lorraine Ash's memoir seminar with Ethel Lee Miller about 12 years ago, and I'm still working on it. So it's a memoir of essays. I remember a long time ago, I made a list of all the things that I wanted to write about, all the things in my life or in my career that were things I wanted to write about. Some were very sad, serious, some were pretty lighthearted. And now they're a collection of essays, personal essays. I sorted them out chronologically, which is not a major revelation, but I have them in different groupings, like chicken soup like groupings. I had them in like family and work and college and marriage, and that didn't work. So
Okay.
I kind of, and the metaphor for the clothesline was from Madeline Tiger, who's a Montclair area writer, who said, just put them on a clothesline. Don't worry about where they go. And as you get along, maybe something will start being apparent. And actually, the most recent first, I'm close to finishing, as it were. I did a prompt at a Saturday free write workshop, which all of you know we do, and it was called Homegrown. And I started writing this, and I started having feelings about my house, and that started more piece about my house, and that my house is sad, that I will no longer live there. And then I started merging that with a piece I did about my garage roof, which took me 10 years to fix before it fell on my head, and how elated I was for that. So you never know where this is going to lead, but the point is to be able to relate an incident or a situation, but then how do you feel about it? And of course, Katinka Newhoff, her echoes of her saying to me at our groups are, Carl, say how you feel. You're not saying how you feel. Carl, how do you feel? So let me stop there.
Okay, very good. Okay. Let's try Diana. So we'll unmute Diana.
I got to unmute her. Okay, go, Diana.
Okay. All right. So Diana,
Yes.
the questions are to introduce yourself and what were your first at a memoir,
A bad echo.
and what principles of memoir writing did you by trying, and what techniques did you try and fail? And I thought it was having sound as worse.
I think it's Diana. Diana. Speaker.
Go ahead.
Yeah, see, it's coming from Diana's phone.
Right. In other words, I'm talking and it's
It's
volume.
echoing from her.
Oh, you have to unmute her.
I unmuted her, or rather, she's muted.
Okay. Did you hear my questions?
Yeah, somehow. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I don't see myself on the screen, but hi, I'm
You're
Diana.
You're looking pretty good.
Okay. I'm Diana, and I'm writing a memoir right now about my father and my relationship with him. The really inspiring moment or eye-awakening moment was when somebody from my critique group said, this isn't a memoir about your father, this is a memoir about you. And that changed the whole focus of my writing, because it hit me. This was a memoir about me. I wasn't telling stories about my dad. I was telling stories about my dad through me.
I actually did something similar. It wasn't a memoir, but for my mother's 80th birthday, I did it for her about her life. It was about me. So it was just anyway. So that was the start, and then
Lorraine. Lorraine, just
Okay. That's really the name for that.
I'm sorry, because everything we say echoes on her phone.
So it's a memoir portrait. You're writing about another person, but through your eyes and talking about their effect on you often.
Yeah, it almost become a technique. It looks like Diana did. She wrote about writing to her father. It's really about her.
Yeah, it's what I did actually while in the midst of this. I took out a piece that is very relevant in the story, which is writing letters. And I wrote a short memoir about my father, and it's me writing him a letter on Father's Day, so, as a synopsis, telling him all the things that he influenced me with. Enough people have said in my life that, oh, you're just like your father. And, I take that as a compliment, because obviously I'm doing things modeled after him, and I'm trying to express that. No, I am expressing that in in the book, it's been a good change of focus knowing that it's my memoir, not his memoir.
Okay.
I haven't so much cut things out of it as I have rearranged them and reworked them to suddenly fit my memoir.
Okay, great. I want someone to call. Camera switch. So we should mute Diana again. Thank you. Thank. So we'll figure this all out at another time. For everybody, the classic question that comes up in our writers group meetings is, what do you do with the information that is so personal that publishing it might hurt someone else? And where is that line? And also, if you're remembering it inaccurately and then you publish it, are you going to get in trouble? And so I think I'd like to start with Lorraine, because she is probably used to this question. So what do you have to say?
Stay close to the truth, stay in the truth, but I also write with a charitable frame of mind. One thing to be certain of is to stay in your own head and not project motivation onto someone else, because that's what's going to get you into court. And you can't know somebody's mind. You can say what they did and how you responded to it, but those are your parameters.
Very nicely described. I really like that. Let's see. Carl, any notes on that? Things that I'm sure this discussion has come up many times at the support groups. Have any additional comments?
Well, yeah, and I think Lorraine nailed it. I think people worry about that too much. Most people are not going to, in their memoir, have issues where they're going to get other people angry at them. But obviously some do, and if it's a family memoir, and if you're concerned about what a close relative might think of something, don't look for problems. I mean, you could share a piece with somebody who might be portrayed. I remember Ethel Lee Miller shared her manuscript with her, not her twin, but her older sister, and her older sister was not pretty happy with it, or at least, but not unhappy with it. So there are things you could do to make you feel better. Also get a story straight. Maybe you remember it in a certain way, and maybe you're a little off. Maybe somebody has a different recollection of it that might or might not be significant. But I think people are, in fact, we had somebody today in Memoir Group, they put in they're talking about things that happened in our high school, and they mentioned two names, an assistant principal by name, and then another teacher by name, and not a very complimentary way. So one of my comments was, well, I wouldn't put their name in. I didn't ask if that was their name, because one of the devices you could do is change someone's name and then put something at the beginning of it, if that's going to be a pattern. But you can easily change the person's name. But if it is a name, then just put S dash, some kind of a way of handling it. But I wouldn't get too consumed by it. I actually know in one or two of the stories that I've written that when I really get serious and get the closure, I'm going to have to change names or do something because I can't soften the thing. On the other hand, I have time on my side. It's 10 years afterwards or 15 years later, and nobody's going to get too upset about some minor things. But they're important things that I went through in the crucible of learning how to deal with issues in the workplace or even personal issues. So deal with it as they come up. Talk to other people. That's why we have two memoir groups right now. Terry is active in one. Diane is active. Actually, they're both in the same one. And we still have people knocking on the door wanting to, share and get reactions like that to things like that.
Okay.
Less than 10 minutes.
Okay. Lorraine, have you ever belonged to a writing group, a memoir writing group?
Well, a memoir writing group, I've led more than I've belonged to.
Okay. How do people help each other? Like what are, in anything I've taught, patterns evolve. People come in, like when we did the Saturday morning prompt group, when people join, they tend to write about themselves for like the first 4 months and get out all their demons. And then they start writing about more random little things about, leaves and fall and individual experiences. Is there any pattern that evolves that the beginning memoirist comes in and does a certain set of things, and after about 4 months, they shift into a more like professional zone? Are there any patterns that you see?
Well, yeah, the most important thing the group does is listen.
Okay.
Hold a respectful place and listen. As a group goes on, and now I've had one group going for a year and a half, they become more disciplined about what they choose to write about. Once they've chosen a master narrative question, they realize that they're writing from that question to an answer. And so they're more discriminating as to what they draw into the story. Because if it's not on that trajectory, it probably doesn't belong in the story.
Well, that's wonderful. Okay. Yeah, that was a really good answer. Thank you. Okay. All right. And at this point, I'll just throw it out. Does anyone have any questions for our speakers? There are 2 attendees, or anybody else, any of our speakers have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So Lorraine, Kathy Hammond, when you just said the concept of a master narrative question that the memoir is in effect answering, that's an individually conceived of narrative question that as someone's working on a memoir begins to emerge as sort of the overriding narrative question of the memoir, or tell us more about that process?
Sure. I mean, sometimes you can free write in an attempt to find that question, but often before you start writing the memoir itself in earnest, you will have identified it because it's the reason you're writing.
Okay.
You want to answer
Give us
something.
a couple of examples of master narrative questions.
Okay. You lose your baby. I lost my baby. What do I do with my maternal instincts if I have no child?
Okay.
So it's not a hallmark kind of question. It's not simple. It's a question from deep in the heart of the experience.
Okay.
Did you have any particular reason you asked that question? Like, are you working on a memoir, or just it was interesting?
No, I write. I've written a novel. I write a lot of poetry. I've written prose, and I keep coming to memoir seminars. So maybe in the back of my mind, I'm thinking of doing, though I haven't acknowledged it to the forefront of my consciousness yet. And I do have a related question, which is I've been maintaining a journal probably for 30 years with lots of material reflections on what's happening in my life and so on and so forth. Is there any relationship? I would assume there's some relationship between the stuff that's in journals and pulling from that for memoir ideas.
Yes. In fact, just this afternoon, I was charting a memoir using someone's journals. I was doing it for somebody. I'm ghostwriting it. And they can be very helpful because since your consciousness is shifting right through the whole memoir, the journal helps you remember what your consciousness was at different points in the journey, and you might have forgotten some steps.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, I forget a lot. I'm sometimes shocked, and I'll go back and read things and think, did I really write that? I mean, I'm actually wondering sometimes whether someone else wrote it and I just forgot the attribution before I recorded it, So thank you. That's helpful.
Sure. Okay. All right. I think that those were some really good questions and answers. And unless anyone has anything else to add, I think we're ready to wrap.
I'd love to ask Carl if he found a theme in what he's writing.
Wow. Following up Carl. Okay.
No, I haven't found a theme per se. It's really more that each of the things I've written, the personal essays, I call them a collection of personal essays, covers a subject, a crisis, a happy moment, mostly challenges. And I wrote them because I wanted to share with my family at some point. Some of them know that. I started out with being trapped in the elevator in the World Trade Center bombing, which was the first piece of writing I ever did, but I didn't know that it was going to be like that. So, but they're a lot more introspective and then lighthearted. So mine doesn't really have a theme. And Helen Lipman, who was going to be part of tonight's, but she couldn't make it, is also writing more like a love story with Newark. We're growing up in Newark and things that happen in the physicality of the place and all that. So I think each of us has different, approaches or themes. I've been toying with some more of a family memoir, And Lorraine, the last time Lorraine did a workshop at the Write Group, she had us do an exercise, and I started down a road of this exercise that had to do with my father, Diana, and I stopped, and I didn't want to go any further, and I still haven't continued that piece from a couple of years ago because I don't want to find out what might be the end of that piece. So, there's nobody's forcing, nobody has a gun to our heads on these things, but to get it out. In fact, the most recent person who just joined one of the memoir is probably going to join the memoir group, was so unsure of his own writing ability. This is Bob Goldstein, that he was just shying away from it. And I said, Bob, write something. And he finally wrote something, and he shared it at a drop-in critique last week, and it really was good. And he was also proud that he was able to write something literate. And it's about going to a Brooklyn Dodgers game when Jackie Robinson first came onto the team, and about racism and about how he felt then and now and whatever. So he's motivated to write now along those lines. So each of us has our own theme to follow.
Okay, and since we muted Diana, let's unmute her for a minute and see if she has anything to add.
No, don't unmute Diana.
Oh, stop, Carl. I structured my memoir not chronologically, but thematically. So every chapter is a lesson that Dad taught me, and each chapter then is filled with the individual stories as I was telling them in his memoir as opposed to mine. So that structure is challenging because it's so much easier to simply go from A to B to C to the end. But doing it this way also collects them as a theme. And I find that to be very satisfying to me. I think it's a good way to tell one story and his story.
Okay. All right. Ready?
Less than a minute.
So thank you everyone for coming. And this was a much better attempt than we tried this last week. We won't go into details. And this is, I thought this was really good. And thanks to everyone for coming.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for all the great input and advice to the leaders. And thanks for moderating, Rose.
Oh, sure. Thanks.
Yes, Rose, great.
Thanks. So we lost Sue, but we'll catch up with her.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I smiled more than Hank.
Click it off.
Leave meeting. Okay.